For small and medium businesses, a point of sale isn't just technology. It's the morning rush, the lunchtime line, the last sale before closing.
Rogers Business point of sale solutions are designed for everyday businesses with easy, intuitive management tools, lower transaction costs, and transparent pricing you can count on. Plus, you get 24/7 professional support from a partner you trust. So your POS keeps up even on your busiest days. A good point of sale doesn't just take payments. It keeps your business moving.
Check out Rogers Business point of sale solutions at rogers.com/POS.
The fire hose of news from America can feel like a lot these days.
If you're trying to figure out what to make of it all, we got you.
I'm Katie Simpson.
And I'm Paul Hunter. We're correspondents here in Washington.
Working just around the corner from where much of the action is taking place.
2 blocks from the White House.
And that's the name of our new podcast.
For top-notch analysis of U.S. politics from a Canadian perspective, find 2 blocks from the White House every Wednesday wherever you get your podcasts.
Including YouTube.
Frequency Podcast Network. Stories that matter, podcasts that resonate.
It's the big story right now in the United States. One Canadians are watching very closely. Protests continue to sweep Minnesota following the second ICE shooting of a protester. ICU nurse Alex Preddy was shot dead by immigration enforcement officers in Minnesota over the weekend. He was protesting against ICE's actions in the state and had the Minnesota governor calling for an end to Trump's immigration crackdown.
What side do you want to be on? The side of an all-powerful federal government that can kill, injure, menace, and kidnap its citizens off the streets? Or on the side of a nurse at the VA hospital who died bearing witness to such government?
All this in a state that shares an 880-kilometer border with Canada. I'm Richard Southern, and today on The Big Story, is Canada ready for an American civil war on its doorstep? Joining us to discuss this is Patrick Lennox. He's a writer and an expert in national security. Patrick, thanks for being here on The Big Story.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, Richard. Thanks for having me.
Now, you got an interesting take on this, and I know you had an article out on it recently. And, before we kind of get to what the impact is or could be on Canada, I mean, we first got to address the fact that you kind of think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Patrick, you kind of think that America's kind of heading towards a civil war of sorts. Am I right?
Well, I think there's an argument to be made that they're already in a form of civil war of sorts. Over the course of the second Trump presidency, I think I, like many others, have been struck by what I can only describe as the erosion of the rule of law, which I believe is fundamental to all forms of coexistence, all peaceful forms of coexistence. Like, without it, we live in, I think you can call it a state of nature, like Thomas Hobbes did, where life is nasty, brutish, and short.
But we've certainly seen protests in the wake of the 2 shootings in Minnesota, no question about it. But we haven't really seen any sort of mass civil unrest, any massive protests on that front. It doesn't look like a civil war to me at this point, Patrick.
Well, I mean, I would disagree. I mean, I think you have to look at it as the federal government turning a private militia, which it has raised, which it is recruited for, and which it is trained on a segment of its population. And that, I believe, is what's happening. If you look back to the beginning of Trump's second presidency, you have him introducing the big, beautiful bill, as he calls it, and allocating, I believe it was $78 billion to just directly to ICE. ICE at the time was 20,000 strong. It's now 78,000 strong. It's been, it's a force in and of itself in American politics right now, and it's been trained on Minneapolis. And so I think that is something that speaks to a breakdown in the rule of law. It speaks to a breakdown in police independence, which we should be very wary of at the moment in Canada.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned targeted on Minnesota. I mean, it does kind of look like the U.S. president is targeting ICE on some of the states that he didn't do well in during the last election, right?
Yeah, I mean, Trump has lost Minnesota 3 times in a row, right? So, and he has a particular hatred for one of their representatives, Ilad Omar, who was attacked last night, giving a speech by a person who, looked to me to be a Trump supporter. He attacked her and sprayed her down with some form of noxious liquid. Luckily, he was restrained and hauled out. But it was another moment where you see Representative Omar, who's a Somali woman, was born in Mogadishu, being targeted. And Trump has targeted the 80,000 Somalis who are in Minnesota, in the state of Minnesota, in an incredibly racist way. And he's called them garbage. He said he wants them out of the country. And it's playing out, and that's what we're seeing. There's some people, are calling this an ethnic cleansing of Minnesota.
Whether it is or isn't, certainly the ICE situation and the way the president has used that, I mean, it is very troubling. Do you think, Patrick, that Canada would intervene in any way to stop any of this?
I don't know. It's something I've been thinking about. And I don't know that we could. I'm fairly certain that we wouldn't at this moment in time. That could very much bring about some form of warfare between our two states. I think we will watch it. We will monitor it. And we may or may not pass judgment on it. To this point, there hasn't been an official line on ICE and what it means to Canada and what our perspective is on it. But I hope to see that soon.
What do you think is the effect on Canada? What should we watch out for here? Could this spill over the border that Minnesota shares with Canada in any way, do you think, Patrick?
Well, it's possible. I think it is possible. It's something that at least we should be alive to. One of the things that I looked at when I was kind of researching this question of whether or not, Canada has given any thought to this was a document that was produced by the government of Canada in 2004, where they laid out, a variety of different future scenarios and geopolitical events that could transpire. One of which was a civil war in the United States. And the government at the time, 2024, saw this as being, very unlikely, although very high impact if it did unfold. And so, my sense after having been in the government of Canada for 15 years is that, we don't have the resources, we don't have the capabilities to really plan and prepare for unlikely events. But I think the events in Minneapolis and the events in Los Angeles and elsewhere in blue states in the U.S. Should suggest to us that that possibility is far more likely now. Like, at what point do the blue states push back against what is clearly targeted political violence against them?
So is that the risk to Canada, that there would be more of an uprising in the United States? Or is the risk that something like what we're seeing in the States could happen here in Canada?
I don't see it happening in Canada right now. We're not as divided as the United States, and our government is very much abiding by the rule of law. Our relationship, the police between the police and the governments is far more as it should be in a democratic society. There's an independence there, and I don't believe that people feel that the police are targeting specific genders or races or politically motivated groups for their own ends. Like that's not happening. I don't think we have to worry about that here.
There are certainly economic implications, too. I mean, just this week, the U.S. president, threatening again 100% tariffs on Canada. But, if this uprising continues in the United States, there certainly could be some big economic consequences. We are dealing here with our biggest trading partner, right, Patrick?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think it's we're in a moment where the administration in the U.S. is putting itself as the arbiter of truth. And it's difficult to understand what's happening in the U.S. right now, through an objective lens. They seem to be intent on cooking the books, as it were, economically. So we don't know how strong the economy is. We don't know what kind of unrest could transpire and what that could mean for economic stability in the U.S. A lot of that is, I think, up in the air.
Is Trump, though, softening his stance a bit on this issue? And I say that because his reaction to the second shooting in Minneapolis was very different to his reaction to the first one, right, Patrick?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I think instantly out of the gates, they condemned Alex Petty as a domestic terrorist, as they had with Renee Good. But I think the domestic sentiment in the United States is pushing so hard back against what's happening with ICE in Minneapolis that he has had to try to soften his rhetoric. But rhetoric is one thing and action is another. And if you listen to Senator from Minnesota yesterday on CBC, he was very clear that yesterday was just as brutal a day as it's ever been in the 50-plus day occupation that ICE has had in his state, that there was just as many abuses of the law, violations of the law, and he felt that there were more ICE members actually being brought into the state and more supplies for their occupation. He thought that ICE and the federal government were digging in, as he put it.
That's the sound of James adding long-lasting Gain scent boosters to his laundry this morning. Several hours later, James sniffs the irresistible scent of Gain on his shirt. Gain. Several hours later, James has even caught the attention of his mother-in-law, and she never gives him attention.
Ooh, you smell amazing, James.
Oh, thanks, Mom. I love you too.
I never said that.
Add Gain scent boosters to your laundry. Add joy to your day. Available at Walmart.
Trump was elected on this promise to tackle illegal immigration, right? I mean, that's kind of the devil's advocate side of this. This is kind of what, in a way, he promised during his last campaign, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think but you have to ask yourself, is this what that is, right? I mean, I don't see this as being a crackdown on illegal immigration. I see it through a different lens entirely. I see this as ethnic cleansing. I see this as targeting a state that has never voted for him and that probably will never be MAGA despite his efforts and the efforts of his administration.
If that's the case, should Prime Minister Carney be standing up and be more vocal on this issue? We haven't seen him really bring up the ICE situation at all.
He hasn't, for obvious reasons. We'll see if he does.
Well, would it make a difference, I suppose, is the question, though?
Well, I mean, it may make a difference. I think he is certainly leading the world right now with moral clarity. His speech at Davos put Canada in a very good light internationally. And he did emphasize there that the rule of law was breaking down at the international level. And I believe it's breaking down and has broken down in the U.S. at the domestic level. So whether Prime Minister Carney chooses to speak about that, that's on him. That's up to him.
There are a lot of Canadians looking on, really aghast at what's going on in Minneapolis and in the States with the ICE situation. Is there anything Canadians can do?
I think that Canadians can demand of their businesses and perhaps of their government as well to take a clear, ethical, moral perspective on this. We have to look at this with clear eyes and understand what's happening there. And it's happening very close to our border, to people who, I'm sure many Canadians have family and friends and colleagues in the United States. This is a horrific thing that is happening on the ground there. And I really believe that it's incumbent on all of us to understand it, to look at it with clear eyes and to recognize it for what it is. This is the movement towards totalitarianism. in the United States. That should be a huge wake-up call to all of us.
You've been following this so closely. How do you see this ICE situation playing out from here? I mean, clearly there could well be more incidents like the 2 troubling shootings we've seen in Minnesota. How do you see this sort of playing out from here, Patrick?
It's really difficult to see. It's hard to tell. It does not look at all like ICE is going to be removed from the state. So, I don't know how long that occupation will last, but consider, we're moving towards 2 months, Richard. 2 months with 3,000 masked, armed, ill-uniformed men roaming the streets in unmarked cars, hauling people out of their homes, targeting schools, picking up 5-year-olds, using 5-year-olds as bait. The case of Liam Ramos is really something.
This is the 5-year-old.
This is the 5-year-old boy.
Tell us about this and what happened.
Well, he was used as bait to capture his father, who had an asylum case out, with the government. So he'd gone to school, and ICE had followed the boy home and told him to knock on the door and to be let in to get his parents. And, it was like, "Hi, I'm home." And then it was like, surprise, it's ICE. They hauled him and his dad to a detention center in Texas. I mean, that's a long ways from Minneapolis.
How is Trump going to deal with this politically, do you think? I mean, there's been some suggestion that he may be set to fire Kristi Noem here because of all this.
He certainly removed her from the file, I believe. And, I think it's hard to see. Maybe she will be thrown under the bus. I don't know. It's hard to predict with Trump.
Just to round it out, I mean, has there ever really been, there certainly hasn't, I don't think, in modern times, this type of tyranny right on Canada's doorstep, Patrick?
No, nothing even close to it, Richard. Nothing even close. And that's why I think we really need to be focusing on it and looking at it carefully and trying to dissect what's happening there. Because, as you say, like it could lead to things that happen on this side of the border. And we have to be prepared for that.
What is the biggest risk, do you think, for Canada?
Well, I think large-scale unrest in the U.S. Right now, it seems to be localized to one state and really to one city. Although, we have seen similar patterns playing out in Los Angeles as well. But that's for sure. I mean, if it starts to boil over and happen in multiple states at one time, that's something that could lead to large-scale instability in the country.
Almost hard to believe that that's what we're saying, and it certainly is what we could be looking at, and I know Canadians are watching it very closely. And thanks for highlighting it for us, Patrick Lennox. Thanks for being here on The Big Story. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Richard.
And that was The Big Story. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this conversation. You can find us on X at The Big Story FPN, or drop us an email at hello@thebigstorypodcast.ca. You can get new episodes of The Big Story every morning, Monday through Friday, wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to leave us a comment or share with a friend. I'm Richard Southern. Thanks for listening.
Gain Super Flings are here to take your laundry to the next level.
Talking about Gain Super Flings. Super-sized laundry packs. These things are huge. Super fresh, super clean. Gain Super Flings.
Gain Super Flings laundry packs have 4 times the Oxy cleaning power and 3 times the Febreze freshness versus Gain Original Liquid.
Super fresh, super clean. Gain Super Flings.
Gain Super Flings for next level laundry.